What's going on, guys? Ben with liftedimports.com, and today I wanted to share a quick tip with you. This is not going to be a long video. Just want to share some quick advice with you on some things that if you're going to be putting a winch on your Subaru or any car for that matter, or if you already have one, I'm going to share with you some other things you need to consider and add to your bag of goodies. Before we jump into that, if you want more information on lifting your Subaru, taking it off-road, head over to the liftedimports.com website. Lots of good articles over there and build features that you can check out for inspiration. Okay, let's jump into this. You're thinking, oh, I'll just put a winch on my Subaru and I'm ready to go. However, there's a couple things that I would recommend that you add to your kit if you're gonna run a winch on your Subaru, your Jeep, your Toyota, whatever it is. You really need to make sure that you have some supporting accessories. So I'm just gonna run through some of the things that you may want to consider purchasing in order to make these recoveries easier and safer. All right, the first thing you're gonna wanna make sure that you have in addition to your winch is you're going to want to have either soft shackles or D-ring shackles. You can use either or both. I usually carry both. I prefer to work with soft shackles because of how versatile they are, and there's just a lot of benefits to using these. Way lighter, which means they're not going to sink in the bottom of a mud pit. They're not going to sink down into the water as fast. This is just like a straight boat anchor, so if this lands in the water, you're going to be swimming around looking for it. The other thing is these have a much larger diameter of what they can fit around, whereas with a D-ring steel shackle, you're kind of limited to what you can fit this through. But they both have their benefits and are both useful. Let's say you've got a buddy out there and you want to recover off of his rear bumper or whatever it is. Chances are you're going to need to be able to lock onto your friend's recovery points, and usually a winch hook is not going to fit around or in most D-ring shackle holes, and you're going to want a D-ring shackle or a soft shackle in order to take advantage of those recovery points that you might be trying to winch from. Now, the next thing that you want to make sure that you got is a tree saver of some sort. This one's really small. It's a very short tree saver. It's actually not mine. My buddy Justin left it in my car, and I just have not met up with him to give it back to him. Sorry, Justin. I'll get this back to you as soon as I can. However, this little tree saver, as the name implies, is made to wrap around trees or other objects that you may want to recover from. So basically what you'll do, be able to wrap this strap around a tree, and then in most cases you can just take your winch hook. Typically you'll be able to loop it through both sides of the tree saver with no problem. If you need to, you can use shackles of some sort to rig all this together around the tree, but it serves two purposes. It's going to make it to where you're not going to damage the tree, because at the end of the day, we don't want to just go out here and tear stuff up. You know, if we need to do recoveries, you know, we kind of want to be respectful of the areas that we're in. And I'm definitely not like a weird environmentalist type of person that thinks humans should be extinct or whatever, but I think we live in a beautiful world and we should be good stewards of it so that it can be a place where we can continue to enjoy for decades and generations and things like that. Now, the other thing that a tree saver does is it allows you to winch from something and actually pull from it, because what a lot of people will do is they'll think that they can just take their winch line and wrap it around a tree and then hook it to itself and then winch off of that. Now that can work, but it's always going to put stress on your winch cable that is not supposed to be there. Whether you have a synthetic line or a steel cable, you never want to wrap your winch around something and connect it to itself. It's never good for the cable. It is always going to run the risk of kinking a steel cable or fraying a synthetic recovery or winch line. And the other thing that's happening is instead of just pulling, your winch line is now becoming this it's in a circle around the tree and it's just tightening on itself, and it's not being able to just use all of its force to pull. And again, that's going to run the risk of damaging your line. It's going to damage the tree because it's just squeezing around the tree. Whereas if you're using this, that winch line's not twisted around anything. It's able to just pull in a straight line against this, and you're going to get out way easier. You've got your shackles, you've got your tree saver. Those are pretty much the main things that you're going to want to get. However, there's a couple more items that I'm going to recommend to you. The next one would be gloves. You absolutely should have a set of good heavy gloves. You could just get like whatever you want that's pretty heavy duty at Harbor Freight or Lowe's or wherever you shop. A nice set of leather gloves is going to be really, really helpful because it's not uncommon when you're working and rigging up a recovery situation, especially if you have a steel cable. It's not uncommon for those steel cables to have tiny little burrs on them that can cut your hands. It's not uncommon for things to start pinching, and you definitely want to make sure your hands are protected when you're doing this stuff. Heavy machinery work is what you're doing when you're setting up recoveries with your vehicles. These are big machines. You're dealing with a lot of force. You don't want to mess around and lose a finger or tear your skin off or whatever. Make sure you got a good set of gloves. Now, this is optional, but I absolutely recommend snatch blocks. If you can manage to keep snatch blocks with you, at least one is pretty much all you need in most cases. A snatch block is going to allow you to double your pulling power. If your winch is a 5,000 pound winch or a 9,500 pound winch or whatever it is, let's say you have a 12,000 pound winch and you incorporate a snatch block into your recovery rigging, you've now taken that 12,000 pound winch and given it 24,000 pounds of pulling power by adding that pulley into your system. Now, I don't know how the physics of it works, but it does. And this can be super beneficial for us Subaru owners because we're usually a little bit limited to how big of a winch we can fit in our vehicles. So having snatch blocks is 100% something that I would recommend doing and adding to your kit. Now, the next and final thing that I would say is get yourself a winch cover. Winches aren't cheap. They take a little bit of time to install, and they're an absolute lifeline when you're out in the middle of nowhere. Having a winch cover that you can put on the winch when it's not being used is a good way to take care of your equipment and make sure that it's in good condition, especially if you have a steel cable. This can help keep moisture off of that steel cable so that it is corrosion free and rust free for a much longer period. You also can help prevent things like oxidation and things building up inside the winch in the gears that power the motor. I just think that's really important because if your winch is slowly deteriorating due to excessive moisture exposure, you don't want to find that out the hard way. Let's say you're buried in something out in the middle of nowhere. Oh, no problem, I got a winch. You know, you try to turn your winch on, come to find out the thing is just completely ruined because you weren't covering it and keeping it safe from the elements. Yes, a lot of winches are rated for water exposure, but it's best not to expose them to water. So those are some basic things that if you're going to get a winch, make sure you order these accessories to go with your winch, and you should be set up and ready to go. If I missed anything, let me know in the comments. This isn't comprehensive, but these are just some things that I keep with me when I'm out on the trails and planning to use a winch. Until next time, I appreciate you guys hanging out. Really appreciate all the love you guys show, and I hope you have a fantastic day. We'll see you out on the trails.